member's resolution. I'm sorry to the member from York South-Weston. I wish I could have been less direct, but that's not my nature. And
you were nice.
I think it is. I think, Speaker, I'm going to vote.
Frank is a nice guy.
I'm going to vote for this resolution. I'm going to vote for the resolution because I believe that in principle the intent is right. But I tell you, this will have no effect on what the government is going to do. That's the unfortunate side. And if we can all convince the Premier, the Minister, to put an end to this fiasco and save not only multi-millions of dollars because the project is being mismanaged, but also address the health and environmental issues that are very clearly on the table and that need to be addressed if this is going to be done right. Thank you.
Further debate, the honourable member for Parkdale High Park.
Mr. Speaker, there's some days you really got to love this place. This is one of those days. You know, I grew up in a NDP/Tory household, and I don't know whether it was my uncle, the Tory, or my father, who was an NDP member, who said it, but he said if you ask a Liberal whether they have principles, they'll tell you, of course we have principles, and if you don't like those, we've got some others. I grew up with that sentiment. It's not mine, so don't blame me. It's either my father or my uncle. And I like to think better of my friends across the aisle. I really, really do. But here we have an instance where you've got the government clearly buying diesel trains, and you've got a member clearly calling for electrification now. Something's got to give, right? You can't stand in two places at the same time. It just isn't physically possible. To the timeline, and by the way, most of what I'm going to say is because of the Ontario Clean Trade Coalition. I want to thank them for being here, and I'm going to mention them by name at the end of my remarks. Timeline. You know, just yesterday, Delhi cut the ribbon on an air-rail link. Their rail link is, of course, electric, like every other major city in the world. It's electric. Guess how fast they did it? Do you hazard a guess? Member from Davenport, member from York South-Weston. How fast did they build an electric air rail link in Delhi? 27 months. 27 months. I mean, I think we can agree that we don't need an environmental assessment to show that electric is better. Come on, folks. Every other major centre in the world doesn't invest in diesel, invests only in electric. Why is that? Why do we have to study this for years to discover what everybody else already knows? And as my friend from Newmarket Aurora pointed out, spend all sorts of taxpayers' money, waste all sorts of taxpayers' money on doing a job twice that could be done once and well. And let me tell you that it's going to go rumbling through the member from York South-Weston's riding, my riding, Davenport riding, and others. It's going to rumble through there. It's not going to be carrying, it's not going to be carrying people, working families who have to get from one place to another. It's going to be carrying a handful of wealthy tourists who are going to pay, guess what? This is what they're going to pay for a fare, not $4 like they do in Vancouver, not $4 on their rail link. No, no, no. It's going to be, we are told, not the exact amount, but if the members had been, and I wish they had been, at the Metrolinx meeting, to stand up for your community, you should go to these meetings. You should go to the Clean Train demonstrations. I haven't made them all, but I made some of them. Then you would have these facts at your fingertips. And here's one of them. I mean, they're saying that the fares will be competitive with taxi or limo fares to downtown Toronto. Taxi fare to Union Station is $53, limo's $58. GO train, guess what, $5.55, and the TTC is $2.50. Compare this with Vancouver, $4. We're going to be shuttling in luxury cars a handful of tourists, even the athletes aren't taking these, from the airport. And what are we doing? Why the rush? For the Pan Am Games. For 2 weeks of supposedly green games. Not so green, not so green. To the issue of diesel. Is there such a thing as clean diesel? Absolutely not. That's an oxymoron. It's certainly moronic. There is no such thing as clean diesel. In fact, nowhere in the world does this Tier 4 supposedly diesel exist. Nowhere. This is an experiment, and even at the Metrolinx meeting, the gentleman who put forward the proposal admitted that, well, if we can't convert them, if it doesn't work out, because after all, it's an experiment, well, we can always shuttle them off. We'll use them as diesel trains somewhere else. So there's not even a commitment to convert these trains, not even from the board of Metrolinx. There's not a commitment to convert them to diesel. In fact, he's already suggesting that won't happen, that they'll just be used as diesel trains. They'll be moved somewhere else. The extra rail, $400 million. I mean, this is absurd. And by the way, I say there's no clean diesel. It's like talking about clean coal. That's sort of an analogy. And this government, by the way, and coal is a good analogy, this government has been promising to phase out the coal-fired plants since they were elected in 2003, and every time they talk about it, we get a new date. Guess what? Same thing's going to happen with electric trains, and is happening with electric trains. And guess what? Coal usage is up 28% since this government took office. Up 28%. Are we going to see the same thing with diesel? Of course we are. Of course we are. They're going to, rush through these neighbourhoods, polluting up to 300,000 residents who live near the tracks, 30,000 children. The Toronto District School Board has passed a resolution against diesel trains. They're getting diesel trains. That's what has agreed to be bought. I was at the meeting. I was there. That's exactly what they said. What the member from York South-Weston has introduced, just for those who are watching at home, just so they know what's going on here, she's introduced a resolution. Well, it's a non-binding resolution. It's a private member's non-binding resolution. It's a nice thing to do. But it ain't going to stop the McGuinty government from buying diesel trains or Metrolinx or anybody. It's a nice thing to do. It's a gesture. And I don't want to be cynical either. I mean, I think that it's wonderful, and thank God for the Ontario Clean Train Coalition that got us to this point where at least she feels she has to stand up and make a nice gesture in this regard. Really, thank God for all the citizens who have been so active around this issue. We've had thousands and thousands of petitions read into this chamber about this issue. And of course, this is going to be an election issue all up and down the tracks. We will make it so. Everyone who cares about the environment, everybody who cares about this issue will make it an election issue. So, it's not enough just to say, well, by 2050 we heard these promises about coal. We heard, when was the first date? 2007, all the coal-fired plants would be closed. Now it's 2014. Guess what? Conveniently after the next election. I wouldn't even put it past this government to promise that they will electrify by 2015, because who's going to hold them to it? Who's going to hold them to it? That promise means nothing if they're signing on the line to buy diesel right now. So the first thing that has to happen, the first thing that we've got to get a guarantee from Metrolinx about, is that they will not buy these trains. End of story. Will not buy these trains. That's the very first thing. Then we'll entertain some promises about what they might buy. But we're not going to see that. We're not going to see that. And there was of course the expression, oh, we've been waiting forever for this air rail link. Well, to me, let's wait another few years and get it right then, if we do it at all. But also, there are other ways of moving people from the airport to downtown Toronto. Other ways of moving people. Sad. Okay. Will it cost more? Of course it will. Cost of converting vehicles, we guess about $1 and $2 million per vehicle. So there you go. That extra track, as I said, $400 million to install, mostly because of a new tunnel needed on the 401. And of course, this is another point that needs to be made, these diesel vehicles will pollute more than the cars they replace, because they're not really replacing cars. They're adding travel. They're adding travel. They're adding tourist travel, from the airport to downtown. That's what they're doing, really. So, you know, and of course, they're only carrying a few passengers per car. You know, this is the very fact that we're discussing this is laughable. There was a wonderful letter to an editor who talked about being in Finland. I've been in Sweden. Anybody who's traveled anywhere, and in Finland, they actually found this laughable, that the Ontario legislature was discussing investing in diesel. I mean, this is so behind the times. This is absurd. This is beyond penny wise and pound foolish. And I have to say that if the McGuinty government, the cabinet, we know all the decisions come out of the corner office. We're not naive on this side of the floor. You know, if they really valued enough the seats in York South-Weston and Davenport, if they really valued their members from those ridings, then they would also step up and make these promises. I mean, after all, look, the member from Oakville's in the House this afternoon. Member from Oakville, $1 billion maybe they invested to, you know, get the gas plant out of his riding, because now he had Aaron Brockovich. Maybe we need Aaron Brockovich to come in around the clean train issue. Maybe then, Mr. McGuinty, our premier, will step up and save these two. I mean, is that what it takes? I mean, we're not talking about a dime here. You got $1 billion. I mean. All we're asking here, all we're asking at the end of the day, is to do the same thing, environmentally wise thing, fiscally responsible thing, and of course, absolutely popular thing, because you're looking at people who live along that rail corridor who are going to wake up in 2015 and see these trains rushing past their windows. They're not going to be pleased. What this government is trying to do is to, you know, push that off as far into the future as possible and pretend that maybe someday, you know, if we get very lucky, electrification will happen, but not now. Pie in the sky, but no pie now. Well, you know what? It's not good enough. We want, the people of our ridings want absolute guarantees the sale will not go through. We want absolute guarantees that nothing but electric will be bought. We want to see it passed at a Metrolinx board. And I've only got about a minute left, so I just want to wrap up by thanking some very key people who are here. First of all, from the Clean Train Coalition, we have Mike Sullivan, Rick Ciccarelli, Laura Alderson, Elaine Fliss, Tony Turton, Greg Cormick, and Mr. Mullally. First name? Bill. And from Community Air, Barry Lipton. Thank you so much for being here, for witnessing this, for all your incredible work. You have really stood up for all of the residents of our community, and we thank you in this legislature for that. And now we turn to the government. Yes, of course, we'll support this motion. I mean, we support motherhood and apple pie too, I would say, to Davenport, York South-Weston. But you know what? We want the apple pie now, right? No buys for diesel. No buys at all for diesel. Not 4, not 12, not 18, not one. Not one diesel train do we want running through our communities, and nothing else will satisfy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further debate? Honourable Member for Guelph.
Yes, thank you, and I'm very pleased, Speaker, to be able to speak in support of the motion by my colleague, the MPP for York South-Weston. And